Hi, friends. I wanted to do a recording of this book that we read 2 weeks ago in case you want to watch it more than one time and think about the book a little bit more deeply. It can also be helpful to remember the very important name of the person who this book is about, Carter G. Woodson, who I'm going to talk a little bit about here in the beginning for just a moment. All right. So the class before this one, we had read about a fantastic scientist named Charles Henry Turner. He was a Black scientist and he really thought differently about insects. He didn't think that they were just little robots that were only capable of doing things one way. Charles Henry Turner proved that insects have intelligent action. That means that spiders can learn. Cockroaches could learn their way through a maze. He was a doodlebug expert, and he proved that bees could tell kind of what time it was. They had a sense of time. And a lot of you asked some really great questions. Questions like, well, why do we have Black History Month? And why is it in February? And that's what this book today talks about. The big answer is Carter G. Woodson is why we have Black History Month. This is a picture of him here. And something that might be helpful to know before we start reading is that he was born in the state of Virginia, this one right over here. So we're over here in Los Angeles, California. He is over here, born in the state of Virginia. Now, this story takes place about 150 years ago, okay? And we're going to meet some important people in Carter's life. This is his father, James Henry Woodson. His mother is going to be very important, Anne Eliza Riddle Woodson. And this is his best friend, Oliver Jones, who changes his life. Okay, so at the end of the story, I'm going to come back and ask you, why do we have Black History Month? And why is it in February? So look for those two ideas in this book, but there's an even bigger question that I want you to think about, in addition to why do we have Black History Month and why is it in February? The big question is, why is it important that history, the story of people, right? Why is it important that history includes all people and not just one kind of people? All right, friends, that's your job while I'm reading today. Be thinking about why is it important that history includes all people? And here we go. This is Carter Reads the Newspaper. The words are by Deborah Hopkinson and the pictures are by Tate. And on the end pages of this book, there are some really great pictures of people from Black history: Booker T. Washington, Francis Harper, Nat Turner, Marcus Garvey. And you might know some of these names, but you will certainly learn more about these people and their contributions to our world as you grow older and learn more about history. Today's book, Carter, and Carter Reads the Newspaper, I actually didn't know who Carter Woodson was before I read this book. And now I have an understanding of how important and wonderful he is. So each February, we celebrate Black History Month. It's a time to honor heroes like Harriet Tubman, right up here, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. But there's one hero who we sometimes forget. Carter G. Woodson didn't help people escape from slavery like Harriet Tubman. He didn't start a bus strike like Rosa Parks, and he didn't lead a movement of millions like Martin Luther King. But without him, we might not have Black History Month. And this is Carter G. Woodson's story. Now, Carter was born in a small town in Virginia in 1875, 10 years after the end of the Civil War. Carter's parents, James Henry and Anne Eliza, were born into slavery, and Carter grew up hearing about their lives. The stories that they told weren't part of any history book, but Carter kept them close in his heart. Now let's learn a little bit more about his father, James Henry. James Henry had run away from slavery to join the Union Army and fight for freedom. Times were hard, though. After the war, James Henry worked on the railroad, saving enough money to buy a few acres of worn-out land. Most years, the crops brought in less than $100. So this family, they don't have a lot of money, and it was very hard to make a living for his father and mother after the Civil War. And let's learn a little bit about his mother now. Anne Eliza was unbelievably brave. When she was a girl, her master decided to sell her mother. Anne Eliza asked him to sell her instead. That way her mother wouldn't have to leave her other 5 children. But no one offered enough money for Anne Eliza. So her master sold her mother and 2 little brothers instead. And Anne Eliza didn't get to see them again until after the Civil War. Now, Carter's parents struggled to feed and clothe 7 children, especially in the winter and early spring when food was scarce. Carter, who was the youngest, once said, "We would leave the table hungry and go into the woods to pluck persimmons." And we can see that orange thing that he's clutching in his hand there. That is a persimmon. They're delicious. So the family had to go and forage for food in the forest because they didn't have enough otherwise. Many times Carter had to jump into bed early on Saturday night so his mother could wash his only pants and shirt for church the next day. Now, Carter could only attend school 4 months each year. The rest of the time, his family needed him to work on the farm. But learning didn't just happen in school. James Henry, Carter's father, he taught his children to stand up for themselves and to take pride in who they were. He gave Carter the courage to look anyone in the eye and declare, "I am your equal." And though Carter's father couldn't read or write, he believed in being an informed citizen. And we talked about that word in class, right? Being an informed citizen means knowing what's going on in your community, in your town, in your state, and in the world, right? Knowing what laws are getting passed, knowing what the news of the day is. So do you see how Carter's father stayed an informed citizen? Yeah, he asked Carter to read the newspaper to him. But newspapers weren't easy to come by. Sometimes Carter read from old ones that had been used to wrap up food or packages. Reading the newspaper gave Carter his first glimpse of the wider world. Well, more than anything, Carter wanted to go to high school. He was really smart and wanted to keep learning, but his family needed him to earn money. When he was 15, he hired himself out to nearby farms, working long hours in the hot sun, and he also drove a garbage wagon. High school would have to wait. Well, Carter's older brother, Robert, found good paying work in the coal mines of West Virginia. Carter decided to join him there. Now, mining, as you can tell from this picture, friends, it was grueling work for a boy not yet 17, and it was dangerous. Once, as we're seeing here, a piece of slate came crashing down on Carter's head. He never forgot his time in the mines. And years later, Carter said, "I'm a coal miner. I can take anything." Now, something really, really wonderful and life-changing happens to Carter while he's working here in the mines. He becomes part of a community. So be paying attention to that in the next couple pages. In this harsh place, Carter met a man named Oliver Jones. Now, you would have to look hard to find Oliver Jones's name in a history book. But in that small mining camp in Fayette County, West Virginia, Oliver did something important. He changed one life, this one right here, that changed many. Now let's learn a little bit about Oliver Jones's history. Like Carter's father, Oliver was a Civil War veteran who believed in education. As a soldier who had been at the Battle of Appomattox on the final day of the Civil War, Oliver had fought for freedom and equality. He was still willing to do his part to further the cause, said Carter. And look what Oliver Jones does for this community of miners that he is working with. This picture reminds me a lot of another book we read, where they shared food and fellowship, and they used it as a way to get power back? That's right, Noodlefant and those noodle parties, right? Each evening after work in the mines, Oliver threw open the doors to his little house, and he invited in the other miners. He made his home a reading room and filled it with books by African American writers and with newspapers from all over the country. And look, he even sold ice cream and fruits, all at prices that the men could afford. Now, at first, Carter just went for the food, but that changed. Carter said when Oliver Jones learned that I could read, he soon engaged me to inform him and his friends as to what was in the daily papers. So just like he would read the paper to his father, now he's reading the paper, to this community he belongs to. Well, Carter was happy to oblige. He liked reading the newspaper. And besides, he said later, I always enjoyed nice things to eat. Carter admired Oliver. He was a well-educated man, but he could neither read nor write, said Carter. He learned through others. And Carter began to learn the same way. Now, Carter had longed for school. Life at Oliver's tea room turned out to be a school of a different kind. When Oliver and the other miners had questions about something Carter read in the newspaper, it was Carter's job to research the answers. If a Civil War veteran was in the news, Oliver wanted to know all about the man. I had to look him up in the books and inform my friends as to what battles he had fought, said Carter. If it was a question about money or politics or a new law, it was up to Carter to find out all about it in the newspaper and explain it to his friends. Carter was inspired by Oliver and this circle of men committed to freedom, equality, and knowledge. Men whose own life stories would never be in a history book. And so the seeds of Carter's own life work began to grow. My interest in penetrating the past of my people was deepened, he said. Now, do you remember when he was driving the garbage wagon? What Carter's real dream was? He wanted to go to high school, right? Well, on this next page, some of his dreams are going to come true. Carter worked in the mines for 3 years. And when he was 20, he moved home to Virginia to start high school. He finished in just 2 years. And then Carter went on to college and became a teacher. He continued to study and work, earning a master's degree when he was 33. Then, when Carter was 37, he earned a PhD in history from Harvard University, the second African American to do so after W.E.B. Du Bois. And Carter was the first and only Black American whose parents had been slaves to receive a doctorate in history. Right, now, this is a really, really important page, friends. So Carter is going to encounter racism here, which is a prejudice or unfair treatment of someone based on their skin color. Now, pay close attention because it changes everything Carter does going forward. At Harvard, so the story goes, one of Carter's professors said that Black people had no history. In class, we did a big time out there and talked about a lot of things, how that made you feel, what it made you think. And everyone in the class said that that's not true. And we can see that that's what Carter is thinking here. He knows this is not true because did his mother have history? Did his father have history? Yeah. Did all of those men in his circle have history? Yes, all people have history. Carter heard this. He remembered his father's pride, his mother's courage, and Oliver's determination to learn. He remembered reading the newspaper. And Carter spoke up. No people lacked a history, he said. Well, the professor challenged Carter to prove him wrong. And for the rest of his life, Carter did just that. In 1926, he established Negro History Week, Later, it became Black History Month. Carter chose the second week of February to mark the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so that's why February was picked. Frederick Douglass, a great abolitionist, and Abraham Lincoln, the president, had birthdays that week. Today, our entire nation celebrates Black History Month, and we honor Dr. Carter G. Woodson as the father of Black history. But in 1926, Carter was alone in his new idea. He had to blaze a trail. He had to spread the word at a time when there were no computers or internet or television. Carter sent out pamphlets about Negro History Week to schools and colleges and churches and women's clubs. And of course, he sent notices to the newspaper. The boy who began reading the newspaper to others transformed the way people thought about history. He fought for a history based on truth, a history that includes all people. Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history, he changed it, and we can too. All right, friends. So now you know. The reason we celebrate Black History Month is because Carter G. Woodson made it a holiday. Yeah, and promoted it to everyone because it was something he really believed in. And we have it in February because of the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln were in February, right? But there's one more bigger question. Why is it important that history includes all people? I want you to think about that. It's something that, it's a big essential question that we'll be thinking about more than once this year. I will talk to you soon and have a great day.